So here, this video clip is intended to be part of an introduction to project management. And here in this video clip, we'll spend a few minutes looking at what's known as the triple constraint or the iron triangle. It goes by some other names as well. Now this is simplistic. It's overly simplistic at boiling a project down. But nonetheless, I find that even in complex project management situations, thinking in terms of this triple constraint can actually be very helpful. So let's have a look at what it is. It's a triangle that, well, different varieties might have slightly different words around it, but as you see, it's a triangle with 3 points: scope, cost, and time. Now, how can we use this, or what does it mean? Well, there's a few ways that I can put this into project context. One is that when we're initiating and planning a project, we have to reach a balance of what it is we're going to deliver, which is the scope, what it's going to cost in terms of dollars or possibly staff hours of work, and how long is it going to take. And a balance has to be achieved, and maybe it takes a bit of negotiation to reach that balance. Maybe your manager or your customer comes to you and says, I want you to deliver this to me, and you've got 4 months, and you've got $100,000. Well, your answer should be, well, that's very nice. Let me do a little bit of planning and find out what can be achievable. You come back and you say, well, if you want that scope, it's actually going to take you twice as long, or it's going to take us twice as long, and it's going to cost us twice as much, and you can show your supporting material. So maybe there's some back and forth, maybe some trading off, maybe they reduce the scope a little bit, we adjust the cost up, the time gets extended, until we reach a point where it's satisfactory to your manager or your client, and you and your project team are willing to commit to that scope, that cost, and that time. So we use it in project planning. Now we also use it in terms of project success. Now here in particular, this is simplistic, but we could say that success is delivering the scope that I said I was going to deliver, which meets the requirements that you asked for, and I've delivered it on cost and within the budget. That may be simplistic because you may find that even if you didn't deliver the scope, that in fact your client is quite happy with what you did deliver. Or maybe even though you went behind schedule, maybe schedule is not nearly as important as scope and cost, which you did achieve, so people are satisfied. In fact, we could spend a half a day here talking about what is project success. It's a very sort of ephemeral concept. Maybe project success is if the major parties, the people that matter at the end of a project, if they think the project was successful, then it was successful. But in this model, we're sticking with scope and cost and time. So at the end of a project, we can congratulate ourselves if we delivered what we said we were going to deliver, and it meets requirements, and we did it reasonably within cost and schedule. So one specific project example I can think of is going back a number of years, but the Concorde airplane was developed by France and the United Kingdom as a supersonic passenger jet, and it went enormously over budget and enormously behind time. It did produce quite a good aircraft. Now, we could say it was a disaster because of the cost and time, but in retrospect, maybe the project was a huge success because of other spin-offs. It gave enormous boost to the aerospace industry in France and the United Kingdom that then led to the ability for those and other European countries to excel and succeed in Airbus, for example. So anyway, I've covered two. Now, there's a third one, which is during the project, we often have to make trade-offs. So during the project, I'm the project manager, and we're starting to slip behind schedule. Well, I have to know, I can ask you, or maybe I already know, which is the most important of time, cost, and scope. If scope is more important than time, and if cost is more important than time, then maybe we can agree to let the schedule slip, as long as I'm maintaining the budget and delivering you what you're requiring. If time is more important than scope, like we as a company really have to get this physical product or software product to the marketplace by November the 1st, maybe if we're going to be missing that November the 1st deadline, maybe we're going to agree on some scope reductions. Sometimes it's called a lean list. Some things that can be removed from the scope in order to be sure we've met the time. So let's be aware of trade-offs among scope and cost and time. Well, sometimes scope and time are going to be very important. Cost will be less important. Generally, management and customers don't like to reveal that cost isn't very important, but sometimes it will be the case, and they're willing to spend more money to accelerate the work in order to achieve the schedule and to deliver the full scope. So we use this in making trade-offs. And I think it's rather important for me, the project manager, to understand what your relative importance is of those three. It may change. As we get closer to the end of a project. In fact, I've noticed on projects that I have managed that at the beginning of the project, there's huge interest by the client on the scope. Oh, which equipment are we going to select? What's this process going to look like? And then about halfway through the project, it's interested in cost. Oh, what's the cost going to be? Let's forecast to the end. As we get closer to the end, as we get closer to producing something that can go into production, they're very interested at what that date is going to be. So the relative importance can change. Now, one objection we often get to this triple constraint is quality. People say, well, where's quality here? Well, there's different ways of handling it. Some people will draw a square and have quality as one of the sides or one of the corners. I prefer to do it the way that you see alongside me in the graphic. Instead of saying scope, I say performance. So if I deliver you some scope, if I deliver you a product and it's working the way it should work, it's meeting the requirements, and if I have delivered it on time and on cost, then I'd say it is a quality project. A couple other things about the triple constraint is, one brief story for you. I was in MDA Space Systems, or McDonnell Detweiler Associates. They're the home of the Canadarm and the Canadarm2 and other robotic space hardware. And one engineer there said to me, hey, we have more than just those three. We have four in an important set of constraints. He said, mass. If you're sending something in space, the weight of that is very important, and you're willing to trade off more cost for less weight, as an example. Another comment on this triangle, which also comes from aerospace, is NASA. For several years, NASA had a phrase for its project management: better, faster, cheaper. They forgot that there's a trade-off among these three. They thought that they could emphasize deliver something better and deliver it faster and deliver it cheaper. It led to significant quality issues. They had some significant, a shuttle exploded, for example, and a Mars exploration venture failed. They gave up on that phrase. Your customer or your management can't specify all three of these. They can only specify one or two, and you have to get back to them with your plan for what the other one or two are. In objecting to the simplicity of the triple constraint, some people, such as Project Management Institute, says that there's actually 6 constraints. They say, yeah, there's scope, there's cost, and there's time, but there's also the number of resources, people resources that you have available to you, people and other resources. Another constraint is risks. The management and customer are only willing to accept a certain amount of risk, and they put quality in here as well. Well, okay, I don't disagree that those are also constraints. I just find that it's a little more complex and it's not directly as useful to me as scope and cost and time. So this brings us to a close in this brief video clip on the triple constraint.